Hi, I'm Don Stegall. I'm putting together an LA Racer 40 by the World Models, and this one's going to be electrified. There's not much gluing to do to get it ready for the components. Basically just joining the wing and the fin glues in. The stabilizer actually screws in. I used to glue them, being an old school modeler, but I've had times when I crashed airplanes or broke a tail and then had to deal with digging it out and replacing it. So these days I screw on the stabilizer, and on the Skyraider Mach 2, the fin actually screws on as well. I used to glue those down. I don't anymore. If you've built many ARFs, you'll probably want to skip this video, but I have a couple of things I'm going to show that you might find of interest. So let's get started. First thing I do before any gluing is I push a push rod through the tube and make an indentation in the covering so I can see where the push rod exit tubes are. Getting those nice and clean makes the push rod slot in and out easier. So I do that before I glue anything on. And on the wing, the joiner has a couple of notches in it, and I round the edges and make sure the wing fits together well before I start gluing anything. And the first thing I'm going to do is put on some gloves. I've assembled all the accessories I need, I hope. I have my epoxy. It's 1 squirt of West Systems 105 resin and 1 squirt of 206 hardener, which has a pot life of 20 minutes. When gluing these wings together, it's important to have a good glue joint, even though it's got a substantial spar. And just straight epoxy, unless it's a thick epoxy, doesn't always get the job done. What I do is add West Systems microfibers. You can use Cabasil as a thickening agent. Micro balloons will bulk up the mixture, but they don't make it much thicker. The microfibers are thixotropic, and that means they thicken it up. Where it stays where you want it. I like my epoxy as a nice paste that stays in place. You can see it isn't coming off of the mixing stick. I use these mixing sticks. They're West Systems mixing sticks. You can get a pack of 60 of them for not very much at cstsales.com. I'm not worried about getting the epoxy on the covering because you can actually use acetone to clean off Teflon. Unlike some of the other coverings, it doesn't hurt the Teflon. Just make sure you get it firmly seated, and then scrape off your excess. I use an artist spatula that I got from Michael's. I have several spatulas because around the shop because I use them a lot. Sometimes I forget to wipe the glue off and then I have to cut it off. And I've got it in place and most of the glue wiped off, so I take my acetone and clean up all the excess and any other spots where I got it. Then I put the fuselage aside. On the wing, I put it down in the joiner slot as far as I can with the spatula. You want to put the epoxy on both sides. One thing I forgot to do is there's this little piece of covering on the wing hold down. With these gloves, it's kind of hard to get a hold of it. I take off this little piece of covering to make sure I get as much of a glue joint as I can. Then I coat half of the joiner with the thickened epoxy. Slide the joiner in and then scrape off that excess where the joiner was, and now repeat for the other half of the wing. Now I'll put some epoxy on the joiner. Set that aside. And join the wing. And I forgot to take off this covering on this side. So get the wing together as best you can, and I have these little clamps. And what I do is put a clamp on the stub that goes into the fuselage. And I scrape off the excess epoxy. Now I clean the trailing edge. Not much glue comes out there because it's a smaller area. And what I do is use 2 or 2.5 inch wide tape, and get the wing firmly together. First I put the tape on it. Get the wing firmly together and lined up. And scrape it off of your hold down. Otherwise you'll be grinding it off. Now I take acetone and I clean off the excess glue. And let the acetone dry. I'll take a 10-inch or so piece of 1-inch wide tape. come back to the top, and some glue has oozed out. So I clean it, look for additional glue. Now, after turning it upside down, some additional glue will have oozed out. Since we're more worried about the outside than the inside, what I'm going to do is wipe the glue off here, and then I'll set the wing supported at the center section so that no additional glue comes out. And that's all it takes to get the parts glued together. This epoxy has a pot life of 20 minutes, but it has a cure time of 8 to 24 hours. So I'll just put this in the fuselage in a resting place, and then I'll start the assembly. Well, the glue parts are together, and I always save the cup or pad that I mix the epoxy on, paper, whatever. Epoxy's nice and hard, so I can throw that cup away now. I always save the things that I mix epoxy on just because I'm fanatical about being sure that my glue joints are solid. So in this part of the video, I'm going to mount the wing and the stabilizer and get them lined up. I haven't shrunk the covering on the plane yet because of timing. I don't have time to do it, and I need to get this video made, and I need to get this electric finished up. So on the wing, it uses metal screws into metal blind nuts. I prefer 1/4 nylon bolts for the wing, and the holes where the blind nuts are actually smaller than the tap drill for a 1/4, so it's no problem replacing them. And I also have the screws from the parts bag for the stabilizer that has 2 metal bushings in it to prevent the screws from wallowing out the wood, and it keeps the stabilizer in place as long as you tighten the screws properly. And as I'll show, I put blue Loctite on the screws because you can still remove them, but you don't have to worry about them coming loose. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the stabilizer aside and get the wing and see if it still fits. I had mounted the wing on the fuselage to take some pictures for the airborne model showcase, and what I'm doing is fitting this nub into the slot in the fuselage to see how it fits. A couple little issues. It looks like a little glue got down on the nub. So first thing I'm going to do is file that off. I'm going to file off a little glue from the front of the nub. see how it fits. It's a little closer, but it's not going to fit without a little bit of work on the fuselage. So what I'm going to do is round the edges of the slot using a half round file. As it turns out, the reason the wing wasn't quite fitting is because some glue was in this area. Wing fits in well now, so I'm going to cut the covering away from the mounting holes. Even though I'm going to use the 1/4-20s, before I start making changes, I want to see how the holes line up, so I know if I need to make any adjustments while I'm putting the 1/4-20s in. So we'll get the screws out. So with the screws in place, they're not actually screwed into the blind nuts. The blind nuts are a little too tight. I believe these are 4mm screws, and I would, if I was leaving them in, I would probably run a tap through it. I'm not going to work well. I probably will go ahead and run a tap in because I need to put the screws in to take out the blind nuts. So everything looks cool, and it's just a matter of replacing the blind nuts now. I have a mallet that has a vinyl hard side and a rubber hard side. And the best way to get these blind nuts out is to put the screws in and tap them gently. So the blind nuts are tapped in now, and the goal is to get them out without breaking the wood. Came out nice and clean. And this one came out nice and clean as well. If you do bust the wood up, add some 1/8" plywood pads to the back of it and drill new holes. But the wood's in good shape here, and what I need to do is get my drill and 1/4-20 tap. Put the drill in the drill bit in the drill. And it's almost exactly the same size as the drill, so you know there's going to be plenty of wood left. And then I just take the 1/4-20 tap and tap the holes. I've tapped the holes, and now what I'm going to do is add some thin CA. And give that a chance to harden. And because the balsa blocks are on top of the plywood, make sure you get plenty in so that the CA gets all the way down. And if you feel like doing any reinforcing, like going in your servo tray or whatever, now can be a good time to do that. I had a boo-boo while I was putting the CA in. The CA got to the outside of the fuselage. CA on covering doesn't look nice, but the Teflon, as I mentioned in the earlier segment, is resistant to acetone, and acetone is about the best thing you can use to clean the CA off of the surface. And I cleaned it, and you can't even see it now. But my holes, I can smell the CA. It's getting hard. I'll tap those in a couple minutes. Put the CA away. While that's hardening, I'm going to cut the holes in the covering for the stabilizer. So I'm retapping the holes after putting the CA in them, and they're nice and hard. Before I try fitting the wing, I want to make sure the screws actually go into the holes okay. So I get a couple of screws out. Screws go in nice and easy. On the wing, I'm using a 17/64 drill bit. The wing bolt holes need to be opened up to the middle, towards the middle just a little bit. So I'm going to use an 1/8" round file. Okay, I got the screws to where they go in okay, and I'm going to tighten down the wing and then see how it lines up and see if I need to make any further adjustments to the holes. With the wing mounted, I'm going to turn the plane over and measure from the back of the fuselage. I get 35 1/8. And 35 1/4. So the wing needs to be shifted this way just a little bit. I'll make those adjustments by opening the wing bolt holes to the left side just a little bit. I need to cut these bolts shorter so I don't need to use an electric screwdriver to put them in and take them out. Like I said, it needs a little adjustment to bring the left tip down just a little bit. So file a little bit. Now I'm at 35 3/16 on both sides, so the wing is lined up, and I can mount the stabilizer. I'm going to slide the stabilizer in. I'll have it upside down so I can see the holes. And instead of using a big screwdriver, I use a small screwdriver because I don't want to crush the balsa. And with the elevator held in the neutral position, I measure 29 3/4. And I measure 29 7/8. So stabilizer needs to come this way just a little bit, and actually, because I didn't tighten it all the way down, I can adjust it. And now it's at 29 13/16. And I expect the same other side to be the same. And it is. So now I will take one screw out of the stabilizer and put Loctite on it, put it back in, measure, and put Loctite on the other bolt. One thing I forgot to check that I really need to check is the alignment of the stabilizer to the rudder. It's pretty close. And the alignment with the wing looks nearly perfect. If it wasn't, I would sand on the top side of the stabilizer saddle till I got the stabilizer level with the wing, because it's more important that it be level with the wing than align with the fin. The fin's kind of got a stuck position since it's glued in. And that's the fitting of the wing and the stabilizer. It's ready for the radio installation. I've already mounted the engine on here. There was an earlier video, excuse me, the motor. There was an earlier video showing a Turnigy G46. It may actually get a Turnigy G60. Depends on the weight and balance. And so now I'm ready to put the linkages and the radio in. That'll be in the next video, so thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to getting this electric powered bird in the air.